I'm Charles Hunt. I'm the protagonist of Barnyard Theater Acoustic Music, and it's only because the barn is in mud and smells like manure right now that he's not playing out there. Normally, in the summertime, that's where we try to get acoustic artists, but we're very, very thankful that Davis Arts Center is willing to sponsor great artists in the off-season. So thank you very much for coming, and I'll tell you a little bit about this fellow. How many have never seen or heard Chris Proctor before? Oh, good number. You're in for a treat, a super treat. I first met Chris in 1999 at the St. George Guitar Festival camp. I'm a hack compared to him, but he was my instructor, and I was there with my son, and at the end of the week I was transformed. At any rate, we've remained friends ever since, and this is probably his 8th or 10th time playing in Davis. He's well known to Davis audiences, and probably one of America's, maybe the world's, foremost masters of 12-string guitar and contemporary fingerstyle guitar playing. He uses techniques that no one else uses, and has been, for those of you that know guitars, he uses Taylor guitars, which are custom made for him, and he has been a long time promoter of Taylor guitars, and they sent him around the world doing this sort of thing. In 1999, I'd never even heard a recording of his. Now I have all of his recordings and all of his instructional videos and everything. Very good material. And I think you'll just get bored if I say anything more, so let me take this opportunity to invite one of my favorite contemporary fingerstyle guitarists, Chris Proctor.
I will now mic my knee for you.
Thank, thank you. I think maybe we're having a post-election hangover here, you know. I didn't really, I mean, I've been out traveling now for about a week, and up until, and I didn't perform Tuesday night. I was doing some school things over near Fresno during the day, but so I knew that wouldn't be a smart move, you know. But I hope everybody gets over it. Just in my own selfish interest, I want people to get out and do things again, not hide out and either celebrate or lick their wounds. But welcome, and I'm happy to be here. And as Charles said, I've been here, and under different guises in the barn and elsewhere, and places that don't exist anymore. Places I've been through this area when I had vinyl records. So I go back a ways. I thought I'd start with the blues. That was a blues tune because this music started with the blues and the steel string guitar. So I thought I'd start with a blues called Henry's Shuffle. I after 6 albums of all original music, I vacillated, and I did an album of arrangements, and it outsold my original music, which kind of aggravated me, and I didn't learn from it, so I did 2 more albums of original music, and then I've done another one of arrangements from other sources, and I'm going to kind of alternate back and forth a little bit here. This is from the most recent one called Close and Personal Friends. It's my reworking of a really bad television theme song from a South Florida TV show called Deco Drive. It's one of those afternoon drive time shows, what's going on, you know, chatty kind of a thing where there's 3 minutes of a lost dog and then 3 minutes of commercials and then 3 minutes of a cooking segment. You know what I mean, the kind of show I'm talking about. And the way we got on was because I needed to promote this festival I was performing at in Miami Beach. And so they agreed without my consent that I would play their theme song on air. And that's how they got me on. So I had to play it, and it was a god-awful thing. So I rewrote it and recorded it. And here it is. It's called Gecko Drive, just so I can avoid the copyright issues. Thank you. Thanks. Well, you know, medleys are supposed to have their own logic of why you put the music together. You'd think it would be because they're thematically, you know, the same or similar. With words, that needs to be kind of the case. But with the melodies, if the melodies sound right, fit together, they could come from quite disparate sources, I think. Or that's my theory. And then there's the whole medleyology where you have to decide: do I end up where I started, or do I end up somewhere else? Do I return home at some point? There's all these weighty, contentious issues to figure out. In this one, we have the old folk lament, blues lament, Karina, Karina, where you been so long. And then we have Curtis Mayfield chiming in with People Get Ready. There's a train a-coming. Thank you. Thanks. I'm going to do one more medley from that record before I wander back into some original material. And the other thing is that there are 3 or 4 things about arranging music that you'd think would be easier, and in fact, they're harder. One is that even though you didn't write the music, whoever did write it didn't have guitar in mind necessarily. So you end up having to solve problems that you wouldn't solve if you wrote music for yourself, because you just wouldn't write something you can't play, normally. Here's an obvious example. What if you run up against a 7-note chord? You got 6 strings. What are you going to do? I mean, that's sort of obvious, but it gives you the point. What if you have a melody that's way up here and a bass that's way down there? It's no problem if it's written for piano. You just move your hands apart, right? That kind of thing. We got a little medley here of... Or what if you end up with a part where you're supposed to have trumpets coming in? These are pertinent to this medley. We have Beatles songs on either end, and in the middle we have a little Leonard Skinner and Paul Simon. Thank you. See, you can't change it when somebody famous wrote it. That's the thing about those arrangements. I lied. I'm going to do one more medley. This is going off in a way different direction, though. I went through my Celtic phase. I'm kind of still partly stuck in my Celtic phase, but I don't have any Irish blood in me that I'm aware of. But I just love that music, and also Scots traditional music. And I've arranged a lot of those pieces over the years. This was the toughest pair I've arranged, really, from the music. Originally, I heard it on the Silly Wizard record way back, and I got to hear them play it live. This is the Cunninghams, and they were a real super group of Scottish traditional music. But the problem is they had a bagpipe going. And I don't know how a guitar does a bagpipe, you know. That was the problem. Took me a good long time to get close enough where I felt like I could make the music come alive the way it should have. This is a scarce of tatties and the Lyndhurst stitchings. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I should check in here before too long because I think that Mike and I, our collective wisdom, which admittedly is not great, was that it would be better on a weeknight with kind of a late start to do one kind of longer set rather than two sets. And I think, is that all right? Okay. The only thing that doesn't restrict me at all, except on the 12 string, because I don't like to put people through retuning the 12 string during a set. 6 string, I'm all over the map anyway. It doesn't matter. But knowing that, I put this guitar in the tuning that I have a little bit more repertoire to choose from, which will be fun. And I have some new old things which I'm about to play here for you. I went to Alaska and did a tour up there for 5 weeks in August and September. A lot of little tiny towns, water taxis, every conveyance known to humankind, from rental cars to buses to tiny planes where they weigh you and put your guitar over here and you over here, you know, and give you headphones so the noise doesn't hurt your ears, so the pilot can talk to you, to ferries that left at 3 in the morning from Juneau, you know, just all kind of stuff. And great little places, Skagway and Haines and Petersburg and Ketchikan and Sitka and Talkeetna, Valdez. And I had a tune I'd written after an earlier trip up there about this wacky bush pilot who'd been my companion for an earlier trip. And I wrote this complicated 12-string piece and then recorded it, and it was so hard I just gave up on it. I just decided, you know, I got other things I got to practice. I can't be working on that all the time. But I decided, since I was going to go back to Kenai, where this guy Tom Thibodeau had lived 20 years ago when I'd been up there, I thought I'd better polish it off. It'd be a good summer project. So I worked on this thing, got it pretty presentable, you know. And then it turns out he was way up in Bethel somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. And but people knew him, they remembered him, and they liked my song. But you know, but now that I put the work into it, I thought, well, don't let it drop again. At least play it for 6 months or so before you give up on it. You know, bush pilot syndrome. It's a disease actually that they get if you mix snow blindness and isolation and noise damage and alcoholism. That's what you get. Thank you. Thanks. No, I'm kind of veered towards the original album where I'll stay for a little bit. I don't give up on hearing something you've heard before. There's more. So when I go to Europe, which I do a lot, after a while you figure you better learn to speak the language, at least enough to say something from the stage, even if all you can say is, I'm sorry, I don't speak the language. You gotta do something, And I've been going to Italy enough now where I can speak pretty good Italian, and it's good fun. But Germany was a little more of a struggle. And France is yet hopeless. All I can say is that I'm really sorry. And in French, that's the one language I should have learned because they're the most uptight about people not speaking French, their language. In Italy, that their feeling is, why would you learn this? This isn't that major of a language. Why? And in Germany, it's, no, I'm so proud of my English. Let me use that, But in France, it's, well, I remember I was playing on the border, the French-German border, in a little French village in Alsace in May, and they counseled me that there would be a lot. I'd make fewer enemies if I spoke German than if I spoke, English from the stage, and because it was so close to the border, and a lot of them German was their second language, or they understand German, and I wouldn't alienate them because they'd see that I wasn't your typical American that didn't speak a language, but even though I wasn't speaking theirs, it was better. So after, I was doing that. I was speaking some German, and they get somebody from like the third row says, and what is wrong with French? In perfect English, and what is wrong with French? So the reason I brought that up is how I start learning those languages, like we all do, is you learn food words first, because you got to deal with that 3 times a day. You don't want to eat stuff you don't want, and you got to ask and get your needs met. And then the other is song titles, food words and song titles get you started. So, and this song title is Cheap Vacations. And in German, there's 2 words for cheap. One means shoddy merchandise, which is billige. And then the other one is like good deal, which is a günstig. And so we had to have discussions from the stage, well, what did you mean by this cheap vacations? Did you mean, so we ended up with günstige Urlaub. In Italian, it's la vacanza economica is like a bad, you didn't get much. And then la vacanza a buon mercato means in direct translation, is well marketed, like you really shopped it well. So this is la vacanza a buon mercato. Thank you. Thank you. I was playing in Montana, doing about a month-long trip, some of the small towns, arts councils and places. And it was just during the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition, you know, and they were pretty proud. A lot of things at the Lewis and Clark expedition happened in Montana. And so I decided to read a book, and I got that book. Everybody seemed to read during that time, the Undaunted Courage by Stephen Ambrose. And then I read, and I was learning so much about it, and I was enjoying it so much. I get to whatever page it was, about 300, and Meriwether Lewis kills himself. And I was just stunned. I felt kind of odd and naive, like, did everybody know this but me? In my school, they just taught me the ascendant trajectory. You know, they didn't tell us the rest of the story. They just told us it was a great thing, and all these adventures and everything ended well. But it didn't end well for him. And I was so taken aback by that, I decided to write him a little tune. My image in my mind was that Ken Burns was going to make a story about this and hired me to write the soundtrack. That was kind of that was my guiding aesthetic principle for this. It's just called Meriwether. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Part of my tour up in Alaska, I was sharing the stage with an Italian bluegrass guitarist, if that's not kind of an oxymoron, the preeminent flat picker from Italy, Beppe Gambetta, an old friend of mine. And we'd each do a set and do a couple things together. And this is one of the pieces we played together because these are flat picking pieces, you know, bluegrass style pieces. We have the Huckleberry Horn Pipe and Lime Rock in the Kitchen Girl. Thank you. Thanks. Well, you know, there are a few pieces that that sort of have their own. There are their own type, where I wouldn't say well, I'll pick something from this particular kind of group because they have a similar feel to them, and put my set together. There's nothing else I've written that has this feel, and so I play it more than maybe I should, because I don't have anything to replace it with in my repertoire. But also, there are some songs I play that it takes me right back to the moment I wrote it or what I was thinking about or feeling, and this is one of those. So that's a good reason to play it again, too. I wrote a wedding processional for two dear friends, and I wrote this when I heard they were getting divorced, about 10 years later. It's called War Games. Thank you. Thanks. Only recently in the last year have I decided I need to learn how to drink coffee. You know, and it was going to Europe. I mean, I've been over there a lot of times, and I kept trying to drink tea, which is my normal beverage, but they do such a bad job of it. And their coffee's always good. They're good at coffee over there, much better than you find almost anywhere else. So finally I broke down this last trip, and I started with this little cappuccino, and I thought, that's pretty good, you know? And so now I'm learning about coffee, you know, 40 years too late or something. But in the old days when I needed Mondo caffeine for some drive or some god-awful stay up half the night thing, I drank this stuff you get from Celestial Seasoning. It's called Morning Thunder. Did you ever see that stuff? For a long time, until they got into caffeine, that used to be the only thing they sold that was caffeinated. Everything else was flowers and stuff, you know, and they had this stuff with a little buffalo on the box, snorting buffalo, and, you know, which was an apropos, you know, metaphor for what was inside. And I drank it enough that I figured it deserved a tune, and it became, then I thought, well, maybe I should write a series of songs named after Celestial Seasonings products. You know, because they got an endless marketing department churning out these cool names. And plus, I thought, this is back in the 80s and 90s. I think maybe I can get a commercial relationship going where they'll sponsor me. You know, put a wrap on my car and send me out there like the Red Bull guy or something. It never worked out. Thank you. Now I'm going to go to the other end of the celestial seasoning spectrum, if that's okay. You know, I don't know what people's image of when you write a ballady kind of a piece as to how that comes about. I think they think you get up in the middle of the night, you pick up the guitar and just play something, you go, aha, that's it, that's my new song. And that only happened once. It did happen, though. And because it did happen, I figured it was destined for the Windham Hill label. That seemed like the right thing to do with it. So I did a demo of it and sent it off to Will Ackerman. This is back in the 80s and early 90s when Windham Hill was a phenomenon in the recording world. People would go to the record store, which I may have to explain what I mean by that, record store. Anyway, but they would buy a new Windham Hill record not knowing who the artist was, just because they liked that music and it was always well recorded and they had a good ear for talent. So I sent this in to him through a friend that knew Will Ackerman. And lo and behold, I get this call from Will saying, Chris, I like that. What is the name of it? And right off the bat, I'm going, oh, what is the name of it? And I was in front of my little T display. I looked up and I said, it's The Emperor's Choice. He said, oh, that's a great title. I want to put it on this record. So I said, okay. And this album came out called the Windham Hill Guitar Sampler that next year, and it sold like hotcakes. And still, I mean, if I total up, I think that sold almost 500,000 copies, which for a solo guitar record is pretty extraordinary. Just the opposite of Morning Thunder. I wouldn't have sent that to him. This is The Emperor's Choice. Thank you. Well, before this trip started, since I'm from Utah and it is November, I put snow tires on the car. Maybe that shows my paranoia level. I didn't check with the forecast a week ahead when I left, week and a half, and see it's probably going to be 75 degrees over Donner Pass Sunday when I go back over. You never know, If you don't get there, you don't get to play. I know that. And there was one time I played, I believe it was in Sacramento, but it may have been here. And it was stormy, it was winter, and I had a car with no chains, and I had to get back over the pass. And whoever it was, somebody came, we talked about this at the show. Somebody offered me their tire chains. It turned out they had the same type of car as I did. And I went over to their house the next morning, borrowed them, took off, got over the pass, used them over the pass, and then got home and shipped them back. Cost more to ship them than they were worth, I think. And I thought that was pretty good. That was good, helpful audience participation. But that travel paranoia is ever with me, and I have a tune for that, of course, too, called Storm Watch. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. I have a couple more I'd like to do for you, if it's okay. A good old Irish jig. I preface this with a little bit of one of Bach's Brandenburg concertos, just because I like how they fit together, and because that way I could call it Bach to Ireland, and which is, you know, there are many, many, many plays on words on Bach titles. There used to be a classical show in Worcester, Mass. On a station I used to play on now and then, WICN. It was called Bach's Lunch, of course. Classical for an hour from noon to 1. Bach to Ireland. We have Cunla and Merrily Kiss the Quaker's Wife, and then a little bit of Bach Brandenburg Concerto number 6 in B flat major. Thank you. Thanks. I want to thank Mike and the Art Center here for having me back. This is a lovely space, and it'd be nice to fill it up and let this music swirl around in here. You know, there's something about high ceilings and wood that always make it sound like you're playing inside of a giant cello or something, you know, and it's a lovely space. And I want to thank you for coming too on what's undoubtedly an unusual day and an unusual week. I started out traveling in the late 70s and early 80s with an old Volkswagen Squareback that blew up between California and Oregon on I-5. You know, that long, long climb you do when you're getting up into Oregon, you're going to drop down into Ashland. It just seems like you're climbing forever. And the car wasn't sounding quite right. But it waited until I hit the top and then blew up. So I could coast down to Ashland, which I thought was very thoughtful of the car. It shot a spark plug right out of the cylinder for some reason. In those days, those engines were in the back, and I had a whole PA system, all kinds of stuff. I took it all out. I'm at the shoulder of the road looking at it. And I pull that lid up and look at the engine, and there's this spark plug wire, and there's this spark plug hanging from it, just hanging there. It's like a broken arm or something. It's not anywhere near where it's supposed to be. And I thought, well, that isn't right, you know. But it hadn't let me coast all the way down there. So I was thinking about writing it a song, and I went ahead and did it. And I thought, well, that was good enough. It gave me plenty of warning. And otherwise, I'd be rolling backwards to weed if I'd done it like a mile earlier, you know, for 100 miles, looking over my shoulder, rolling down to weed on the shoulder of the I-5, which would have been pretty serious enterprise. Just call over the pass. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll send you home with a little sort of, I guess it would be like an amuse-bouche, a little treat. Different. Little Knights in White Satin. Thank you. Thank you very much.